communications professionals are often talk about Gen Y, Generation Y, or even Generation Z, sort of kids born either 1918, 2000, and how their relationship with media is changing. But I think we're missing the essential part of when we talk about Generation Y, or even now Gen Z, the new kids on the block. It's actually about digital, and so you can call them the digital generation, but the digital is just the medium. What's actually happened is, for this generation, it's all about now. It's all about instant gratification, and for these kids, even instant gratification takes too long. And for us as professional communicators, it means that we need to be faster and deliver delight now or never. Literally never. They just turn off if they're not listening to us right now. People are interacting online now 24/7. People don't turn off their digital devices. Actually, most people, the first thing they do in the morning before either turning over to see their loved one or going to the bathroom or doing anything, they check their cell phone and see whether they got the messages. We're on it 24/7. If we're awake, we're on media. And that means rather than sort of just a 24-hour news cycle, it's a 24/7 news cycle. Every single second counts, which means that people expect live updates. Digital media is live media. All media now is live media. Unless we can actually raise our game to become live communicators, then we're basically history. I think communication is getting more difficult for brands and organizations, simply because of the sheer amount of clutter that's out there and the speed within which we need to communicate. I mean, it's a little bit like a computer. Computers used to go through batch processing. You used to store up instructions, and then at the end of the evening, they'd kind of process the stuff. But now there's real-time processing going on, which means it's live. Unfortunately, communications departments, PR departments, messages have to be sent in, sent out, rubber stamped, then recycled as lost firelighters before you actually can do anything. And that's a completely redundant way of actually communicating now. We need to be able to communicate live, and that, just from a pure organizational perspective, is really, really tough. I think the relationship between brands and organizations and their audience is going through a fundamental change. We used to be able to talk about ourselves as communicators, or our companies, our organizations. It was about me, me, me. I've done this press release, I've done that. But now that just gets lost in a sea of communication unless we actually make it pertinent and relevant, and most important, helpful to people, to our audiences. They're just going to ignore us. They've got a filter on. It's a cognitive filter. Unless this information is going to help me do what I want to do faster or better or for less cost, then people will just ignore you. So what that means, that the shift in where communication is coming from is less about what we can do, what we can talk about ourselves to others. So it's about ourselves, and it's more about how we can help other people. I think communicators, traditionally, we've had a kind of a messaging mindset. I mean, we're not necessarily advertisers, but whether it's a press release or it's an advertisement or a communication campaign, it's all about messaging, getting a message. What's the message we want to communicate? Rather than sort of, what's the message that our audience wants to hear? That will help them. That will help them do something. And we need to switch, because actually just talking about us, nobody cares. There is just too much information out there. People just filter on. The human brain has evolved as a problem-solving device. The sole reason that humans have a brain is to solve problems. And so what that means is, for communicators, unless you're solving people's problems, their brains are just closed for business, and we're not going to be able to cut through. One of the problems that I think we have in communication is we suffer from shiny object syndrome. We're actually confused or seduced by new channels, whether you're on Yik Yak, whether you're on Meerkat, Instagram, Twitter, etc. And we spend a huge amount of time saying, oh, we've got to get our message out on these new platforms. And we sometimes forget why we're actually communicating. And I think there is a big shift coming, and it's underway now in communications, which is all about actually going back to the origins of what PR was all about. Forget the technology. It's just technology. You'll get your message from A to B. Good technology does that. But what you need to do is to actually think why you're communicating. And if you think back to the origins of PR, what it was all about was about giving people information to help them make smarter, better decisions. And I think that's what we've got to do as professional communicators, and forget the technology, forget the messaging, and move to a mind shift where we're in the business of helping people.